Hi there and welcome to 15 Minutes with Longevity. Hosting the show with me, I have Dr. Sidi Guli, founder and director of MediSpace Wellness Clinic. Joining us in the studio today, we also have Mark Robler, who is with Women Empowered, a self-empowerment system for women. And Mark Khan, a regular to our show, who is head of HR and organizational development for Investec. Sidi, great to have you in the studio.
Really good to be back, and I think it's such an important topic, so I'm really grateful that we've got people of this caliber joining us today. South Africa has been named the rape capital of the world and has some of the highest levels of crime, something that's very daunting to many people. In this show, we will be speaking about how women can ensure that they can protect themselves in the face of danger, as well as how companies work with their employees who have become the victims of violence in South Africa.
So, Mark, we talk about, fitness, diet, health as being all these things, but we know that your psychological health is really important. And I think living in South Africa, one of the things that we take for granted these days is that there is a possibility we might become a victim of crime, of some form of crime or another. And that has an impact on our health and well-being. So we're very interested around this concept that you work with around choices. And I know you call it women empowered, but I'd like to believe it involves everyone. It's not just women who can be victims of crime and suffer the health consequences. So maybe we can just talk a bit about it. What does that mean? Does it mean like karate chops and, gonna lay them on the ground? What is it about?
Well, I think to start off with, most women if posed with the question, if you were put in a situation where you thought you were going to get raped or murdered, what would you do? And I think universally, most women would say, well, I don't know what to do. And in essence, there's only three things that they can do. And I say to them, well, the first thing and the most important is if you're placed in a situation where you think that's the issue, the first thing is you must leave, if you can. If you can't leave, there's only two things you can do.
Run away. Just absolutely run.
But where women are terrible, if I can use that phrase, when something feels wrong, they need to know what it is that's making them feel out of place. And a big emphasis for me on the course is about your sixth sense, your intuition. If something feels wrong, leave. You don't need to know what it is that's making you feel uneasy. But if you can't leave, in other words, that person or persons holds you, ties you, whatever the case.
Surprised
Exactly.
you.
If you can't leave, then there's only really two things we believe you can do. You can either do nothing, in other words, you go with whatever your attackers, assailants want. That might be rape, it might be robbery, whatever. Or the second one is you can resist. We like to use the word to immobilize. We don't like to use the word fight. Fight implies a level of skill, which not everybody has, and to acquire a level of skill like that, you would need to spend a lot of time in training. So what we say is whatever you do to that person or persons of a hostile nature or violent nature, if I can call it that, that does not immobilize them, has to infuriate them. So WIP is about that choice. It's about saying, I'm not saying what you must do. What I'm saying is when you're placed in a situation like that, you need to have all the options to be able to make a choice. As we were talking off air, a lot of women said to me, Mark, I would rather be raped and maybe live. And I've had other women on my courses that say, Mark, I would rather die fighting than be raped. So again, it's about choice, and nobody can say to you, Giselle, this is what you should do in said situation.
But one has to believe that in certain situations, for example, if there are weapons involved, I mean, if there are weapons involved or there's more than one person involved, that your chances of being able to overcome that are going to be a lot worse than if you just one-on-one and you're dealing with a weapon that can't kill you immediately.
Of course.
So surely, I mean, one has to have some intuition about that. But doesn't human nature just take over? I mean, some people just react without even thinking.
Again, I really believe without a plan, a lot of people get themselves into situations that could have been avoided had they had the necessary information. Again, we spoke off air. You don't want to go and try and take a weapon off someone. If someone has a knife or a gun or whatever the case is, something that could pretty much kill you straight away, you do not have the skill, nor can you learn that skill in a short period of time, how to take a knife or a gun off someone. So generally speaking, if somebody has a weapon like that and they want, and they're using that to get you to do what they want to do, I always say you need to ask yourself a question: what do they want? So if he's using a gun to rob you, then please let him rob you. Let him have everything. I say everything else can be repaired and replaced.
Yeah.
The gun's not, but if for a minute you think he wants to use that gun to force you to take your clothes off, to rape you, then you need to make a decision. You need to say, am I going to allow that to happen? Or at some stage, am I going to resist and risk the chance of perhaps getting shot? Because that's what it's about when we get to that sort of point, when you get to the cliff edge, you're saying, if I don't do this, that's going to happen, and I'm not prepared to live with that. So it's about a decision. We really speak a lot to choice. There's so many courses out there teaching multiples and so many complex things.
Sure.
And you walk away from these courses thinking, wow, how good was that instructor?
Yeah.
But in reality, unless you go home and you're prepared to invest hours and hours and hours practicing this, whatever that person showed you is absolutely useless.
Sure. Mark, now obviously in the corporate environment you will be working with this because it is just a state of life in South Africa. How do you think, first of all, formal corporate South Africa are responding and supporting staff and get involved in creating awareness around what you should be doing? And is it really their responsibility? Or should it be the individual's responsibility to sort themselves out?
Look, I think it's a shared responsibility, and most corporates in South Africa do take a degree of control over the security that they can offer in the workplace itself.
Right.
So, we think about it, take for Investec, for example, it's got about 4,000 people in South Africa. The vast majority of those staff have had at one time or another, have had some criminal engagement. They've been robbed, hijacked, we have rapes and so forth. It's almost daily actually across the country that someone has that.
Yeah.
So we think about it in three ways. Obviously there's prevention. So in the area that we have control, which is on the premises, we have security and we look after people when they go to their cars at night to working late, and some degree of control over transport from the building to their homes if they work late especially. And we try to provide a safe environment and transport. Then we also look at their homes. So if people come and they say they're not safe in their house, then we will carry the expense of doing an assessment of their area, particularly if they are an individual that is experiencing a lot of stress and is not going to be able to work properly because it's not safe at home. Then we'll try to assist them. Obviously, to a point, they have to take responsibility. But probably the largest piece where we respond is after an event. So sadly, that's most commonly the case. Is, in fact, last week, one of our people was hijacked at gunpoint with his partner, and fortunately they weren't hurt and they were dropped off somewhere. Yeah. So we've got a response to that, which is well practiced. We've got an employee assistance program. We've got psychologists on hand. They immediately go to their house, debriefing sessions, and then we have a culture of support. They don't have to come to work immediately. What do they need? Do they need perhaps some psychiatric medication if it's severe? And we look at it across that whole value chain.
I'm really interested at this point just to bring in the whole point that I think that is commonplace with trauma. We're very good at the reactive aspect of it. I'd like to take the conversation back to the proactive part, where I think you, Mark G, come in and your self-empowerment program. What are the self-empowerment tools then that you impart on an individual? Because we've discussed here that we can't exactly all predict how we're all going to behave when we're faced with danger, but there must be some sort of guideline, as Giselle was correctly saying, when people are armed or versus unarmed. What are the tools that you focus on in terms of giving us some sort of leverage when we are faced with danger?
Awareness,
all right,
without knowledge is paranoia.
Okay.
Awareness without knowledge is paranoia. So I believe everyone should do some sort of course. Obviously, we at Women Empowered, a big focus of ours is taking this concept to corporates, and we've done so with quite a bit of success over the last couple of years. We're moving more into the mainstream large corporates, and as Mark said, the corporates are very, very keen to engage with people like ourselves to speak about this type of value add for their staff, because it is I always say to the guys, you give them a cell phone, you give them a company car, you give them a medical aid, and let's be honest, as you said earlier, we are the rape capital of the world. How are we empowering our women if placed in a situation like that?
Mark, can you just give us the ABCs very succinctly on how we can prepare ourselves better if we are under attack.
It has to work for you, irrespective of who you are, whether you're short, fat, tall, thin, weak, strong. You can't say, well, this will only work if you can do this, or will only work for that, or this will only work for guys that are. So what WHIP teaches is one technique, a very simple technique.
And you're going to show it to me now?
I'm going to show it to you now, yes.
That's
but, that is easy to use, and it doesn't matter who you are.
Perfect.
Lovely.
So we're going to get and look at the technique, and then I'm just going to give one last word to Mark, because I think, yes, of course. I mean, we're hopefully not going to go through it, but if we do go through it, maybe you can give us some of your experience in that, just some quick tips if you have had an unfortunate experience.
I think in most cases it's not about if you're going to have a bad experience, it's when. So I think we need preparation. I agree with Mark.
Yeah.
Preparation's the one part, but also understanding after the event that you need help. The most common mistake we have with our staff is that after the event they just grit their teeth and move forward and say it's over, and so the recovery is very difficult. The one piece of advice is after an event, if you don't get the awareness to get out of it and you have the suffering, get help fast, immediately, first 48 hours, that's what counts.
Right.
Draw on your company's resources to assist you. Don't be a hero psychologically.
That's really good advice.
Great. Okay, well, I'm going to thank you quickly for joining us today. Thanks so much for coming through. Sorry we never have enough time, and we're going to whip through just now, Mark, and you're going to show me a few tricks of the trade, and that will whip through. You're going to show me the one little gem that hopefully is going to help us all. We've asked Mark to show us a few hints and tips to Ayanda, our producer. I think that would be really helpful if you would show us what would happen if an aggressor came into a situation, and here is Ayanda.
So we believe there's one position and one target. The target being the throat, the position as I showed you, non-threatening. The target we believe that would immobilize the attacker is the throat. So in essence, you would get this close to the person. There's some theory involved around the hips and shoulders. From there, you would deliver a punch to the throat. The key, and that which we cover in training, is about going through the target. You would finish the technique behind it. Doesn't matter who I am. If you strike me in the throat, you finish the technique there, I will stop breathing. Very important. Do not try this at home on your husband.
Okay, and you've got to obviously hit really hard. I mean, this is not a soft punch.
Exactly. It's about punching as fast as you can. We speak about theory. There's some theory involved around hips and shoulders and rotation. So the power comes from a rotation, not from muscles.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ayanda. That's great.
Thank you.
That's the end of our program for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks to Mark and Ayanda and our other guests for joining us. I hope you have a healthy, a happy, and a safe week. Goodbye.